Hola, chicas. This is Bree Cobb, entrepreneur, wife, mom of two, and advocate for women's right to be selfish. Today's guest is New Jersey divorce attorney Lois Kahagi, and we talk about the topic of when he's no longer the one. All right, let's get into it. Hi, Lois. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you, Bree, for having me.
Of course. Thank you for joining me. I'm excited that you're here because I know that this is going to be a very meaningful conversation for quite a bit of people. So I think let's just jump right in. Let's just get right to it, right? So I wanted to talk to you because of what you do, right? What you do for a living. And as you know, this podcast really speaks to women who are at a different stage in their lives, right? They have devoted most of their lives to raising their kids and taking care of their families and whatever else they were doing during that time, whether it was working on their careers, running their businesses, whatever. But I have found from my own experience, as well as talking to other people, that once you get to a point where your kids are almost out of the house, you start to have different thoughts because all of a sudden you have a little bit more time on your hands and you start to assess where you are in life and really determine what makes you happy. And you look at every aspect. Okay, your kids are your kids. I would assume they're making you happy because you've raised them, right? But are you happy with your business? Are you happy with your career? Are you happy with how you look, how you feel? And then the big one for this particular conversation is, are you happy with your spouse? And because you are a divorce attorney, as I shared with our audience, I thought it would be very interesting to speak with you because you can share some insights that you have from your various clients, but also from your expertise. And initially I'm thinking for that woman who may be struggling or on the fence with trying to figure out what should she do, is divorce something that she should consider, speaking to someone like you could help. So right off the bat, I'm going to ask, what percentage of your clients actually seek you out because they're ready for a divorce? Do they seek you out because they're ready, or do they seek your expertise out because it's something they are considering, even if it doesn't take place for another couple of years? What do you find?
So I find that I'd say 70% are there. They are seeking a divorce attorney because either somebody has filed divorce, their spouse has filed for divorce, or they are ready to file for divorce. The decision has been made. Then the rest of them are in that place where, is divorce what is best for me? Is divorce where I should be heading? So to go on with that question, for these two groups, I treat them as a divorce attorney. I treat them differently.
Okay.
And for me in particular, because just by way of background, I am married and I have two boys. So when a person is coming to me, the 70%er is ready to file for divorce, is in the divorce process, either because somebody has filed. For the person who has been filed against, there's nothing much we can do there. We just have to go through the legal process, start responding, so on and so forth. The person who tells me that I am ready to file for divorce, I will have my consultation where I lay down, these are the processes, this is what happens, this is what you should expect. And then I let them go. Now that you have that information, think about it, come back, contact me. If you're ready for me to sign, to send you my retainer, let me know. And I do that because I need my clients to have agency in the process, because sometimes you will find clients who will come because it is just, let me just do this and see if this is really what I want. And even as they're telling you they're ready, you can sort of sense that they need that a bit of space before they actually get going with the process. And so I give them that. I give them the ability to still, you have consulted with me, think about it, come back. I'm still here. There's no rush with the divorce process. It just gets started. So then the 30%, who we call, in divorce world, it's called the tire kickers. The ones who are like, well, let me see. I'm just looking around. It's part of my option. So it's either divorce or therapy. So they come, this is when I'm going to determine if I'm going to go for divorce or I'm going to go to therapy. So for those ones as well, my main focus is on what are the reasons that you are looking to get divorced? And are those reasons, can they be worked at in therapy? Have you talked to your spouse about this? And that's the other difference between, the 70% and the 30%. 70%, the spouses have talked about this. This has been bandied about. And so as they're coming, the 70% is coming to me. This is a conversation that has been had. The 30%, they're most likely the ones initiating the conversation, will be initiating the conversation. They will be talking about, well, I think this is the direction I want to go. And so they want to be prepared. What does that look like? And so with those, I don't bring in the, well, you may be paying alimony, you be entitled to alimony, you divide this, you do this. It's more of, well, think about it. Is this really what you want to do? I give them a general lay of the land of how divorce looks like, from the emotional up until the financial, very generally, but also giving them the option that if you feel that you could work on this in therapy, or just by, resetting yourselves, the two of you, you should explore that. So, and particularly when you have children involved. So those are two different ways I approach it.
So do you find that your role ends up being one of which you play psychologist, especially to the 70% who are coming to you saying, I am ready to go? Because I can only imagine what the conversations are like that you're having. You have to touch on, as you just mentioned, the emotional side of things. You have to touch on the financial impact, because I would think that those two are the main, of course, aside from the kids, right? Mm-hmm. If they have kids. But those are some pretty major buckets that I think are universal. Everyone's concerned about those things. So do you find that is your role? So psychologist before attorney?
You know what? It's so true, because for a long time I've tried to resist that. And usually the thinking is, well, you cannot be their psychologist. You are their attorney. And, very quickly when you see somebody who needs more of the emotional hand-holding, that send them over to a therapist and make recommendations for that. For me, the way I do it, the first consultation is that I really want to know where you are emotionally and mentally. So I will take a lot of time to dig deep into that, even setting aside, the legal part of it, is that, are you ready for this? And I go deep into, the marriage. How was it? How did you relate? Why do you think you're here? What happened? What are you looking at? When you get divorced, how are you looking at life beyond divorce? And I try to, the word empowered is used a lot, but I do that, especially in that first meeting. And I do that and particularly for the clients that retain me. I do that for just like where we are into the process, let's say a third into the process, I'm still doing it. Because for me, I see that when the client is empowered and now understands that it's not the attorney making the decisions for them, you're the one making the decisions, and I am telling you what I think. I'm in the advice and counsel part of it. I find that then you have a person coming out, particularly a woman, coming out on the other side stronger mentally and emotionally ready to go on to the next phase.
Okay.
So I do that a lot. And so I take on the role of the therapist, psychologist. I embrace it because I feel that it benefits me, and it benefits my client for sure, but it benefits me too, because then I'm able to properly represent them. It's almost that I'm not fighting their emotions. We are now both working together towards this goal, which is to get you divorced. And divorce, if nobody knows by now, it has nothing to do with emotion. We think it has a lot to do with emotions, but divorce has nothing to do with emotions. It's just three things. It has to be the custody of the children, who deals how that is going to get done, the division of the property that was acquired in the marriage. So, and that includes the assets and the debts, and then support for the spouse and the children. Those three things are just divorce.
What if you're in a situation where, so the kids are basically out of the house, or almost, like say they're in college. So I would assume you have the expense of college that you have to figure out how that's going to be dealt with. So then that would leave support if custody is not really an issue at this point. How, like, what types of, like, what does a woman have potential access to in terms of support, financial support specifically, if her kids are not around? Does it depend on, I guess it depends on the state, and you are working in New Jersey.
Yes.
So does it depend on the number of years that the couple has been married?
Precisely. So it has to do, it is like in New Jersey, you have a set of factors, several factors. One of them primarily has to do with the length of the marriage, the financial dependence, and that goes both ways, especially in New Jersey now. It is whether it is the husband or the wife who was supported. So what is the extent of the financial dependence?
The wife, no. The wife will support. No.
Yes, I cannot begin to tell you. Those are some of the very difficult conversations. And I can tell you, there's some wives who just say, you know what? I'll stick it out. I will stick it out. I just don't want to quote, well, they never became a client, but one who actually said, you know what? I'm just going to wait for him to die.
Oh my goodness.
So
I mean, I'm laughing, but it's real. I know, because if you get to the point in life, and like I said, if your kids are on their way to college or almost done with high school, you're at that point where that is a consideration, right? Because you're in this next leg of your journey where you want to do some things that you're happy with. You want to be with who's going to make you happy, who's going to encourage you, inspire you, uplift you. But if you have this financial thing hanging over your head, it's like now you have to worry about money because you have to pay out to, an ex-spouse. Oh my goodness gracious. I can't even imagine that.
And then on the other side of that, if we're talking about, I want to get divorced because I want to now, just get to my life's purpose. The kids are gone now, but at the same time, I have been so dependent on my husband. And so when you come to me, we're trying to figure out, okay, what can you get? And I probably set my career to the side just so that I could raise his children. And now here I am, and I am dependent on my husband, and I have to look at this support and how is it going to help me get to where I want to be? Yes, I want to be free, but do I have enough here to get me there? Mm-hmm. So that's really another consideration that, women find themselves in. And again, that's where the emotional part of it, where you go to you go to therapy, you also go to financial education, so that you actually know. I find myself even doing the financial education, and I can tell you I'm no financial anything, but I say, listen, you sit down, do your budget so that we know what we are facing. And that's very early on, I'm doing those reality checks so that realistically, what can you get done?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it works both ways. The spousal support, yes, it's dependent on the length of the marriage. The ability of the spouse to pay and the needs of the other spouse. It depends on if they are caretaking, children caretaking needs. In this case, if we are talking about children that have already, relatively independent, on their way to independence, then that factor is not that greatly considered. Mm-hmm. Talks about, we think about the education. What have you done about education? Now, when you're in a situation where you have held back your education because, so that you could raise the kids, then again, that I have noticed has begun to work against women.
So are you talking about the woman who's literally delayed her own education? And so now that she has more time to herself and the kids are off, she wants to go back to school. And in a divorce situation, what does happen there? Does he pay for that?
So that's part of it. So we call that in New Jersey. It's called it's a type of support, alimony. That we call rehabilitative alimony. And now the wife has to make a showing that I have enrolled in school. This is how much this is going to cost, and then show that you're actually taking steps to do that. Again, with all this is assuming that there is money in the pot to divide up all that.
Right.
I can't tell you how many clients I have that all they're dividing up is debt.
Wow.
And figuring out who is going to be filing for bankruptcy. And it's not, and it's professionals. We're talking about professionals. We're talking about teachers. We're talking about doctors, dentists, who just by the fact that they have decided to get divorced, have suddenly figured out that there's not enough to go around. So divorce is one of those very, very expensive processes to go through and cannot be gone to lightly.
So I can understand why people would just say, "I'll forget it." Just stay in your current situation, figure it out, decide to be unhappy for a long time, or really go and seek therapy and see if you can turn things around. Because I'm always amazed by how things turn, right? How they take a turn for the negative. How you fall in love with somebody, you have this union, you have kids, and you would think having kids and building a life together and building a home would bring you so much closer together. And then something happens, I guess, pressure, and one can't deal with the pressure of life, even though you would think that experiencing those pressures together would bring you closer. But then in some cases, once the kids leave, you hear about these odd situations. Well, I guess they're not really odd in many cases because you're hearing about it more and more, where once the kids go off, all of a sudden they're talking about divorce. And it's like a lot has had to take place before getting to that point. So, and I can't imagine someone approaching this lightly, but that is concerning all around. And it's just scary to think that people could be so in love at one point, have kids together. And I think that is amazing to do because this is a bond that you have forever. And all of a sudden you hate each other and you're getting divorced. It's so crazy. But I do have to ask you though, do any of I would assume yes is the answer to this, but are one of the reasons for separations around cheating, one or the other?
A lot. Well, let me not say a lot. It's not so much. That is an aspect of it. There is that. But I find by and large, it is the reasons, a lot of the primary reason that people get divorced is the people have grown apart. Mm-hmm. And so they're not doing things together. And when I say not doing things together, I'm not talking about, not the dinners and the date nights and whatnot, but they're doing things individually. And so they don't come together to deal with matters of the marriage. And one of those matters of the marriage is finances. And so you find that because of this lack of communication and growing apart, people are doing their own financial things, or nobody's consulting the other when, when they're doing something or not doing something. Mm-hmm. And so you find that it is only in a divorce situation when I'm telling you, fill this financial document, that for some spouses, that's the first time they're finding out that their spouses owe like $60,000 in credit card debt, or have primarily it's debt, or have this business that they are a part of that the other spouse had no idea about. And so it all stems from just the lack of communication. The other thing too that I find is the lack of intimacy. And I'll tell you, just really from the woman's point of view, all too often it's actually surprising to me, because I don't know, but it's surprising to me that I hear a lot of women say that we're no longer intimate, and that is not okay for me.
Right.
Right?
No, I hear you, because I guess, again, it comes back to the pressures of life, right? And then it drives a wedge between people, even though, again, I still think that should be something that brings you together, right? But for some reason, it separates people. So I can see that where it then leads to a lack of communication, which then leads to a lack of intimacy.
Yes.
Which could then potentially lead to infidelity.
Yes.
Now, in those cases where there may be infidelity, do you find that it's on the part of the woman or the man?
I tell you, it goes both ways these days. I've seen it go both ways. Now, from what I see is emotional, and what now has been characterized as emotional infidelity, in that you're not out there meeting in hotels or anything like that. There's not that physical infidelity, quote unquote. I will make that distinction, but there is the emotional one.
Then I would assume you're speaking about the woman.
Yes. Yes.
And that is deeper a lot of times, more so than a physical experience.
And yes, and then when you think about it, and when women are confronted about it, you can see that, and now when I represent men who have come to me because the woman has been, as they say, has been unfaithful, and they come to me, and then they're not detailed about it, but there's just another hurt about it. A really, really deep hurt.
Oh yeah, I think we've seen that over time, right? Where men cannot get over that, but women can. I mean, even if it still hurts a woman, we're willing to accept it and overlook it. I know I'm not. It's like, don't even think about it. It's like, there will be no second chances. I mean, who knows? Who knows how any of us will actually respond in a situation like that until it happens, God forbid. But yeah, I mean, from what you hear traditionally, it's the man that just cannot get beyond that physical connection that his wife may have with someone else. So
right. And they even treat the emotional, which is not to minimize, and for all of us, we are in this learning spectrum of emotional and physical is all the same thing. Not to minimize the emotional one, but it's that look of like, I cannot even be, where I'm thinking that, well, at least it wasn't physical in my head, in my not lawyer head. Wow, at least it wasn't physical.
Right, that's the wife in you going. Oh, lady, you can get beyond that because it wasn't physical.
You got me. Right? Someone's wife, and so it's like, get over it. But it's really, really hurtful. And for women, I find it's the physical one. That's what just is now, that's the end of the road.
Yeah, you can't get beyond that.
Right? That's the end of the road for them.
So for the women who decide that, we've been through therapy, I have, I have sought out your advice as a divorce attorney. I hear everything you have to say, but I still want to go forward. Now what? Like, how long does this process take? And what are the steps that are involved? And I know we can only mainly speak from New Jersey's standpoint, because that's where you are licensed. But what happens? So for that woman who's listening, who says, you know what, he's not the one anymore, for whatever her reasons are, whether it's infidelity or it's just the emotional connection is not there any longer. And, or, the kids are out of the house, thank goodness, because now I can go ahead and get the divorce that I've wanted for the last 10 years. Because I've also heard that from some women where they say, I'm never going to get divorced because I want my kids to grow up in a household where both parents reside.
Yeah.
I never thought that was a good thing, because people think that kids don't see, feel, or sense the, I guess, the lack of connection between their parents. And I would only assume too that arguments take place, or they don't see you actually doing anything together. They see it. So you're not really saving anybody from anything, right? So, but for that woman who's made that choice already, and she decided a long time ago, when the kids get to a certain point, then I will leave. So she's come to you, she's ready. What's the process?
So now I'll tell you the way I do it again, because I'm one of the divorce lawyers who's like, divorce is mainly a mental and emotional process. But I know that the court is not going to address those emotional and mental issues that you may have. It's mainly, courts are there for being financial. So the way I do it, depending again on the kind of client it is, I tell my client, okay, so you retain me, I will write a letter to the spouse. And this is, I usually, I've saved it as letter to spouse. And letter to spouse basically says that, hey, I have been retained by your wife. Usually my hope, I tell my clients, like, listen, I hope you have, dropped some gems of that this is coming, right? You guys have had this discussion. So it's, and
not.
Right? And that's why even I do this letter to spouse, because I say, that's the one that says you have come to the end of your marriage or your relationship. And my client, she did, Mrs. So-and-so desires to see this to an end. Very, very general. She desires to do this amicably and wants to proceed as such. So this letter is to let you know that I will not, I would like us to discuss and negotiate. I'm not ready to, we're not going to be filing for a divorce yet. And we would like to just deal with the issues or try and come to an amicable settlement. So I say that I will identify the issues. I will be in contact with you. And when you retain an attorney, please give them my information. So that letter serves, the purpose for my client to say that, okay, now we are serious about this. It gives the husband the opportunity to know that she's not coming, all guns blazing, just ready to see him to an end. Like, we're going to do this in a civil way. That's one way of doing it. So I do it depending on the client. Another way I will do it, again, depending on the client. If I feel that there's a client who feels that I need to get a hold of this process, I will tell my client, okay, we're going to file for divorce. So we have that placeholder there. And then we will send him the letter saying that we have filed for divorce now, and notwithstanding the fact that we have filed it, we are going to proceed in an amicable fashion and would like to settle this case. Most cases, 90% of the cases in New Jersey are settled outside of court, and we want to proceed as such. And then there are also situations where there is the third option, which is the one that, well, here is the divorce paperwork. I very rarely want to use that third option of, we're just filing, you've been served type thing that we see in the movies. Very rarely do I recommend that, because it just starts the whole process in a very litigious way.
Right.
And if I have a client who is the client who is what do we call it? Who's the disadvantaged spouse, the spouse that is who's going to need the support. That's not the way to start it, because then that just tells you that this is going to be a difficult road ahead.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So now, then that's how I say this is how we're going to start. The one thing I tell my client to do is you gotta know what your financial picture is like. So I want you to have your taxes, your tax returns. I want you to have where do you bank? Recent bank statements that tells me that this is how much you have in your bank accounts. I need you to get a handle of the debt. What do you know about the debt? Get all that information. You have to get a whole host of financial knowledge about your marriage.
But in many cases, though, and I'm surprised even today that in many cases, the husband still managed the finances, right? So what about that woman who really doesn't have a clue, like has no idea about their complete financial picture? How does he have to give up everything? Meaning, how does he have to share all of the actual documentation? Or do you hire like a financial investigator to kind of dig deep into the couple's situation to uncover all of the financial things that she may be unaware of? And what if you do have that husband who says, I don't care, you're not going to get anything. I'm going to fight you to the end because I'm not giving up all that I've worked hard for over X number of years. Like, how does that work?
Right. And that is
you get down and dirty, Lois. Can you go and fight him?
Don't get me started. Because I try to present that, listen, this is going to get settled. But when we have to go at it, we will go at it. And that, I will get back to how we start this process. From what you tell me, speaking to my client, and you tell me that I have no idea what goes on, he keeps all the financial information. I have no idea. I don't even know where to begin. So then that's the one client I say, listen, we are filing for divorce right away, because then we immediately are able to get access to this financial information through the discovery process. And the discovery process in New Jersey and in most states is this wide-ranging ability to get any and all information related to the marriage. I will ask you to give so through that process, we ask the other side to give us bank statements, bank statements give us. And if we have the sense that we're not going to get them, or we give you an opportunity to do it and you don't do it, then we have the ability to subpoena these documents directly from the banks themselves.
But you have to be aware of them.
Right. You have to be aware of them. Sometimes it's more, I tell my clients that, listen, look at the mail. What's coming in? Take a picture. I don't need you to, don't open anybody's mail. Just take a picture. Tell me, okay, that it's that bank and that bank. I've seen him go to this bank. Now, really, you become your own investigator, because then that, number one, saves you money. Because if we have to hire a financial investigator, that's going to cost you money. Mm-hmm. But most of these things, you can look at them. You can look at old statements. All we need is to just see that the bank, that's the bank he goes to. And you'll be surprised now, even banks, you have banks that just don't accept cash deposits. You have banks that, so if you want to withdraw money from one account, everything is recorded. So what happens is that I will look at that bank statement and I will know the money went to this place.
There's a paper trail.
Right. So you figure, yeah,
Or
exactly.
trail, an electronic trail.
The trail, and the paper trail, the electronic trail just gets you going. And so we figure
out. The person who does banking or hides things overseas.
Right. So same thing, because the thing is that number one, because of the even federal laws, the transfer of money overseas is not as opaque as it used to be. Now, you will find that even banks do not want the liability of just the willy-nilly money laundering type affairs that people do. So there will still be a way of tracking it. And what it is that what we basically say is that, well, this money came in, this money went somewhere. The fact that it came into the part of the marriage, and unless you can account for its expenditure, it comes into the pot, and we're going to have to figure out how it gets divided. And the money that comes in then establishes this was the standard of living, because you will find that, some women will come and the husband will say that, well, I didn't make as much money. For example, you have a spouse, you have a couple that has, taken kids to college, has 2 homes. One is paid off, another one has, some kind of a mortgage. They're modest, contractor here, not doing much. When you look at their bank statements and you look at what they're filing and what they are declaring as their income, it doesn't add up. And this is where women and wives have to be careful, because when you sign those joint tax returns, just, hey, just sign this. At the time of divorce, and you're trying to say that I had no idea, that is really not, it's not a successful, it's rarely successful that a court finds that you had nothing to do with this lifestyle or the way the money was going, or these potential tax liabilities. We usually consider it as, well, you were in the marriage, you enjoyed it, so you take the good and the bad.
So it seems basically like being naive does not exonerate you from anything, right? If you're naive about it, but your signature's on something, that's your problem, because the assumption is if you signed it, that means you were in a total agreement, right? And you were totally aware.
There you go.
Yikes, yikes, yikes.
Yes, there are ways to work for you, to work on your behalf to get that, what we call the innocent spouse relief. But in the divorce context, but if you're coming to into divorce seeking innocent spouse relief, it's an uphill. It's an uphill road. And so when you think about, well, why is divorce so expensive? This is why. It's because of these things that we have to do, let's say, to recreate your financial picture, because you had no idea. And so we're doing all this investigation, trying to recreate your financial picture where you had no idea. And in the divorce context, I have an hourly rate, and every time I'm sitting there going through bank statements and all that, it's costing you money. Even if I have my paralegal do it, I still, at the end of the day, have to be satisfied that, those statements represent what they appear to represent.
Right. Yikes.
It's not that bad.
I'm like, I don't know. It sounds to me, it's like, clearly we all know that divorce should not be taken lightly at all, but it's like you really have to think long and hard about it. But I would think for many women, especially from an emotional standpoint, you have thought long and hard before you even start heading towards divorce. I remember quite a few years ago, I was speaking to this one person I used to work with. It was a man, and I passed by him in the hall, and he said, yeah, I think I'm going to speak to a divorce attorney just to know what the options are. I was surprised, because he used to always say that his kids were his hostages, meaning his wife's hostages, actually. So in other words, he wasn't going anywhere because she had them. But when they got to a certain stage in life, clearly, I don't know what was going on between the two of them, but he said, oh, I'm just going to go talk to someone. Now, we're definitely not headed towards divorce. We're just going to go talk to someone. And
Right.
I'm thinking, I don't know anyone who speaks to a divorce attorney who doesn't have divorce on their mind,
Right.
you know?
Right. Yeah.
So,
I,
and they're divorced today, but
right. I can tell you, especially, it's interesting you say that because I have what I don't know how I can characterize them as like irons in the fire.
mhm,
That I have a couple of potential. They're out there.
mhm,
They've come. They've consulted. They know that's what they want to do, and they're still like, I'm gonna come to you when I'm ready. And they've actually even paid their retainer. So I'm sitting on, I put it in my trust account and just waiting for them to come in and say, okay, I'm ready to go now. And I see that as just being mentally ready to go there, because when you get divorced, it's not just, for me, especially being married, if I think about divorce, I think about like, it's not just me and my husband, it's with his family and the community at large.
mhm.
So, and I find that for us women, we think about that. We just think it's not just my husband and I. It's like my
Extended
in-laws,
family, right,
right? Yeah, my in-laws who have now become like family, the
right,
community, who I am as a person is I'm identified as this, as so and so's wife. So
right.
now what? So my kids now, you think about, okay, now the kids now, when we're walking them down the aisle, now who is it? I
I
hear
know, I know.
I hear that.
But I know it's true because I don't think sometimes you really think about that because I didn't think about that until you just stated it. But yeah, like when you think about the extended family,
Mhm.
well, on your side, in terms of everyone being like, oh, it's different now that you don't have your other half that you've grown accustomed to. But when you think about how you may lose his side of the family as
Yeah,
well, you may lose friends who you've grown to know and bond with because of the couple situation. So who gets who gets those friends? you know? It's like, how does that work? So yeah, there are a host of other things I'm sure people don't really consider until they're like really into it or until it's over.
yeah,
They're
yeah.
faced with it.
Right. And so the weighing of that versus who this after divorce life is just, those are the emotional things, that the emotional and mental preparedness that you have to have,
Mhm,
so that you don't get down, you don't get bogged down in the divorce process.
mhm.
Because for me, I want you to be in and out of this process in less than a year.
Yeah, that
Like,
was my other question. What is the
right?
length of time?
Yeah,
So it's
yeah,
about a year.
yeah, about a year. Generally in New Jersey, if your divorce is going beyond a year, there's gotta be like good reason for that. Even judges in New Jersey get a lot of pressure for, these divorces that are taking that, beyond a year. They
Hmm.
start to be flagged as, hey, this is a delay.
Hmm.
So I find that if you're not emotionally and mentally prepared for post divorce, I find them getting bogged down in this process. Like, you can't make a decision. Like, I need you to agree to this. Like, these are I'm presenting you with three options, right?
Hmm.
And I need you to make a decision on these. And you will find, and really it is just somebody who is so unsure about the post, what happens after, is not able to make decisions within the divorce process. And so they're kicking and, being dragged. And then sometimes you find even our relationship, attorney client relationship can,
They start to dislike you. It's like, stop pushing me. I'm not ready yet. But I guess it's fair, right? It's fair because I think once you file that document, everybody changes, right?
yes,
Your in-laws, your cousins, like everybody who you're close to, who's grown to love you guys and know you guys as a couple and as a family,
yeah,
they either support you or they dislike you and disown you like right away.
right,
And I would think that that's pretty frightening because then the closer you get to actual divorce, you start to see what your life is going to be like. as a what, unmarried or divorced person who no longer has that family unit, you
Right.
know. And then on top of that, you can't call possibly your mother-in-law like before. You can't call, you know, cousins who you've grown to know as your cousins and friends you've come to know through your husband. It's just, you find like a good portion of you has been taken. I'm oof, just a thought, you know,
Right.
that makes you think twice, I'm
It
sure.
does. It
But
does.
I've got a question for you though. So you're married. How long have you been married?
It's gonna be 20 years in December.
Okay, so 20 years in December, and you have two sons. How
Yeah.
old are they?
I have two boys. One's 17 and the other one's 14.
Okay.
So I usually say, like, in New Jersey, so in New Jersey, at 20 years, you have this open durational concept of alimony, meaning at that point now it goes on until, you know, somebody retires or something. So now I'm at the 20-year mark where it's,
I know
well,
listeners, they can't see our faces, but it's like, oh gosh.
oh, there
That's
you go.
painful. That's painful. Well, with that, like, so for someone who's married and has, you know, two kids, and so they're in high school, almost on their way out the door to head towards college. How does all this impact you? Like, if this is pretty much your profession and you are dealing with this from an emotional standpoint, as well as you got to be hard hitting at times if you need to be to get some resolutions, how do you handle this? How does it impact your life? Like, can you leave work at the office?
I'll be lying if I say that yes, I leave work at the office, because I tell you, there's some nights I wake up like in the middle of the night and I start reading cases just to see, okay, well, is that, you know, something I could use? So for me, this business, so this profession slash business, what it has done for me, it has, one, made me become very even more compassionate. I thought I was compassionate, but it has made me become more compassionate. It has made me also be a whole lot less judgmental about, you know, who does what and why they do what they do. Because people are in situations for whatever reason they're in, of their doing, not of their doing, but they're in just those situations. And so they're coming to me to get them out, to help them. And so I take on that role of helping, you know, to not do any harm, to help and to make sure that somebody comes out of this process strengthened, empowered, and not feeling like they have just been, well, they'll feel like they've been run through the ringer, but at least that there is hope on the other side.
Right.
That the decision they made to get divorced was a good decision, right? Was a good decision just based on how they've gone through the process with it. They may have been unsure in the beginning, but as they go through it, for me, it is, yes, you made the decision, you're good. You're good. For me, it is, I will not do any harm to anybody who comes to me, because I feel like if I had to go through this process myself, I don't even know. I don't know.
So I'm sure it makes you think twice, three times, four times as hard to one, try to keep your professional life separate from your personal life, because especially if you encounter a situation where it's very emotional, say a client that you're representing, to not be able to carry that into your own home and into your own life, I'm sure it's got to be difficult. But maybe as you mentioned, you view it as you're helping people get on to that next stage of their lives. So I guess you can lay your head down at night and go, I've done my due because I'm helping someone get there. I'm sure that's still a challenge, though, even for
I can tell you it is. The other thing it's also helped is, you know, like you said, you know, being married, and anyone who's married, it's like, this is quite a journey. The thoughts that I had about marriage when I was getting married are just, my God, like 180. Like, so what it has made me also, it has made me be patient in situations where I would not have been.
Mm-hmm.
It has made me, say that I'm going to present myself. I'm going to do the best I can in this marriage, because I can see, I see where the problems begin.
Mm-hmm.
And so I try very hard. I can't tell you I'm any good at it, but I try very hard to, like, that's not what's going to happen. I'm going to try very hard to, like, the communication.
Mm-hmm.
Before it was not easy to talk about finances. I was like, you're doing whatever you're doing, I'm doing what I'm doing, and we are plugging along. But now, if I find that there's something in our finances that's just not where I want it to be, I speak up. Mm-hmm. So I've learned also to speak up within my marriage, because I have seen, what happens when you don't speak up.
Right. Mm-hmm. So it has impacted you then in a positive way, because it makes you address, based on the things that you see in other people's relationships, it makes you address them head on in yours.
Yep. I couldn't have put it better.
I hear you. Mm-hmm. So with all of this, how do you stay motivated every day? Because, I mean, some days, I'm sure that it's got to be a challenge. So, I mean, are there certain practices that you put in place to clear your mind, to put yourself at ease? What do you do? How do you motivate, or how do you get motivated?
How I get motivated is, one, working on staying positive. I've realized, or let me say, mindset. So working on being true to myself, working on my mindset. Why am I thinking this about this thing? And when I find myself, like, drifting into the negative, I pull myself out. So I listen to a whole bunch of, I've gotten into the podcasts, the podcast world, listening to a lot of self-improvement type podcasts. Mm-hmm. I have now started biking.
Oh, okay, good.
Oh my God.
Like a stationary bike, or do you go out?
I go out biking, which was something that, I did it when I was younger. Then now I would panic about, cars and this and that. Now I do it. So the physical activity, I've realized that, when you're physical, then it clears your mind. There's a lot to be said about that. Mm-hmm. And just, centering myself and figuring out the things that are important to me. Like, growing up, I would feel like thinking about myself was selfish, and that's not what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to think about others, but also accepting the fact that, thinking and taking care of myself is important, because if I don't take care of myself, then I won't be able to take care of others. Right. At some point, you'll become resentful, you will become irritable. It's just not going to work. So right. That's what I do.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Well, I've gotten to the point now where I've embraced this, and I start to share this and communicate this and encourage others to do the same, to mm-hmm. practice being selfish. So I'm saying practice selfishism, because we're always so selfless, right? We're always doing for other people, and it's fine. But at some point, you've got to say, this is all about me. Yeah. If that means carving out time to, I was going to say, go to the spa and stuff. You can't even do that today. It's just so frustrating. I mean, I guess depending on where you live, you can, but I don't know who wants to with this pandemic, right. So, all right. So I'm going to be cognizant of your time here, Lois, but I want you to share your contact information. Like, if people want to connect with you, how can they do that, so that if they want to have other conversations or whatever, or I don't know, just hear what you have to say, what should they do? How do
So,
they reach you?
I'm on Facebook. So I'm on Facebook as
Uh-oh.
with my Kenyan, I call it my Kenyan name. So I'm on Facebook as Wamaitha Lois Kahagi. So I'm on Facebook. My law office is in New Jersey. So it's in central New Jersey, Islin, New Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
My email is lois@wlk-law.com.
Okay.
If you just, Google my name, I come up. I'm so happy to talk to anyone, working through this journey and trying to figure out, is this what I need to be doing? I think I come from that place where, divorce is not for everybody, but it is for some people.
Right.
And I don't hesitate to let you know that this is what what you should do, coming from a very, I would say, very authentic place.
Right. Okay. Well, I am definitely going to include in the show notes, which can be accessed through actually through all of the vehicles as well as on my website. So I'll make sure that I include all of your contact information there. So if anyone's interested in reaching out to you, they can do so. But Lois, this has been such an informative conversation, and I really appreciate your candor, right, and your guidance just for women who may want to shake things up a bit and do something different and be stronger in the next leg of their journey. So thank you so much for sharing your expertise and to talking to me so that we could reach people. So thanks for your time, Lois.
Thank you so much, Bree. I cannot begin to thank you. I gotta tell you, you get information because of the questions that I asked of you, and thank you for making me comfortable through this process. And
Oh, thank you for making me comfortable.
I look forward to more conversations.
Oh, definitely, definitely. Especially we'll see what listeners have to say and ask. So maybe we can do a part two, depending
Yeah.
on what they're looking for, what they like to hear, and what they'd like to know.
Yeah. Thank you
Okay?
so much.
Well, I really appreciate this. Thank you so much, Lois.
All right. Okay.
All right, take care.